The Galactic Peace Pact had survived longer than most stars. For 300 cycles, it had stopped wars before they began. Borders shifted through votes instead of fleets. Old enemies learned to argue instead of burn. The pact was not perfect, but it worked. And now it is failing. High above a dying blue star, the Galactic Council chamber glowed with warning lights. Holographic banners flickered. Voices overlapped. Fear bled into every corner of the vast circular hall. Reports streamed across the air. A neutral world destroyed. Trade lanes burned. A civilian station erased in seconds. The first violation of the pact in a century. Counselors shouted accusations. Some demanded punishment. Others demanded silence. A few demanded war. At the outer ring of the chamber, humanity's delegation stood quietly. They did not shout. They did not threaten. They watched. Many species still found humans unsettling. Not because they were strong, but because they were calm at the wrong times. Humans had entered the galactic stage late, scarred by internal wars and a violent homeworld. For generations, they had argued hardest for peace. They had helped write the pact itself. To some, that made them noble. To others, it made them weak. A towering reptilian counselor finally turned toward the human envoy. Your allied system was struck, it hissed. Your citizens are dead. Do you demand retaliation? The chamber quieted. Every eye moved to the human. Ambassador Hale did not raise his voice. He did not even step forward. Humanity requests emergency negotiations, he said. We request restraint. We request time. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Restraint? After this? A sleek avian counselor laughed openly. Always have mercy. Always have patience. This is why the pact is breaking. Another voice cut in. If the aggressors face no force, others will follow. The human ambassador nodded once. That is correct. Several counselors leaned forward, surprised. Hale continued. That is why this council must act now. The reptilian counselor slammed its clawed limb against the floor. Enough words. The aggressor empire refuses to attend this session. They are mobilizing fleets. What does humanity intend to do? The chamber waited. Humanity had fleets. That much was known. But compared to the ancient empires, they were modest, defensive, spread thin across harsh systems. Humanity had never led a war beyond its borders. Hale met the counselor's gaze. If the pact holds, he said, humanity will stand by it to the last. And if it does not, someone asked. For the first time, Hale hesitated. Only a second, but it was enough. If the pact collapses, he said slowly, humanity will not negotiate again. Silence fell. The words were not shouted. They were not dramatic. But something about them felt final. The session ended without resolution. No punishment was agreed upon. No fleets were authorized. The council chose delay, as it always had. As humanity's delegation departed, alien observers whispered among themselves. Empty warning, one said. They always choose peace, said another. They won't risk everything, a third concluded. No one noticed the small data spike that followed the human envoy's departure. Across human space, signals long buried beneath civilian traffic awakened. Deep space relays powered on for the first time in centuries. In forgotten systems, silent objects changed status from dormant to active. Far beyond known trade routes, massive shapes began to stir in the dark. Meanwhile, the aggressor empire made its next move. Without waiting for council approval, its fleets crossed into a human-aligned system. The defense stations there were outdated. The world below was a population hub, not a fortress. The attack lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, the planet's atmosphere burned. The council reconvened in panic. This time, the chamber was filled with fear instead of anger. Visual feeds showed burning cities. Refugee ships overwhelmed jump lanes. The aggressor empire broadcast a single message to the galaxy. The pact is dead. Adapt or kneel. Some counselors called for surrender. Others called for unity. All of them turned toward the empty space where the human delegation should have been. Humanity had not returned. In the void between stars, an alien scout vessel drifted near a region marked unstable and useless on every star chart. Its sensors flickered, then screamed. Space folded. Not violently, not explosively, but with terrifying precision. One gate became 10. 10 became hundreds. Ships emerged that no one had ever seen. They were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were armored like fortresses and scarred like veterans. Their hulls bore no Empire markings. Only simple human identifiers, numbers, not names. The scout transmitted one last image before its signal vanished. An endless wall of human warships. And at the center of the formation, a single broadcast began to echo across the stars. "This is humanity," the message said. "The Pact has failed." The galaxy did not hear humanity's message all at once. Some systems received it as a whisper buried in static. Others caught fragments, half-sentences, distorted tones. But every relay station, every military channel, every council archive recorded the same opening line before the signal cut. "This is humanity." For many species, that alone was unsettling. Humanity rarely broadcasts anything without context, apology, or explanation. They spoke carefully, politely. Now there was no greeting, no request, only certainty. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, panic replaced debate. Delegates arrived late. Some did not arrive at all. Holograms flickered where living beings should have stood, their owners trapped behind burning borders or severed jump lanes. The aggressor empire's envoy did not attend. Again, that absence spoke louder than words. Counselors demanded answers from their intelligence chiefs. Screens filled with star maps covered in red. Entire regions blinked out as communication arrays went silent. Not destroyed, simply unreachable. Someone asked the question no one wanted to ask. Where is humanity? No one answered. Because no one knew. Human space had gone dark. Not violently. Not chaotically. It was as if an invisible curtain had dropped across dozens of systems at once. Trade routes vanished. Civilian traffic returned automated warnings and nothing else. Even long-range probes sent toward human territory failed to report back. It was not a blackout. It was isolated. Far from the Council, near the edges of known space, the aggressor empire celebrated. Their admirals watched recordings of the destroyed, human-aligned world on repeat. They mocked the Pact openly. They mocked humanity even more. They begged for peace. One commander sneered. Now they hide. Their laughter did not last long. The first human strike did not come to the capital world. It came to a relay hub, a massive, heavily guarded command nexus that controlled fleet coordination for 3 sectors. The Empire believed it untouchable: layered shields, patrol rings, defense platforms older than humanity itself. No warning was issued. No surrender demanded. Space around the hub bent inward, folding like paper. Human ships emerged, already moving, already firing. Their weapons did not blaze or glow. They struck with precision beams that cut through power cores, shield generators, and command spines in perfect sequence. The entire installation went dead in 30 seconds. Not destroyed. Silent. The Empire lost contact with 3 fleets instantly. Confusion spread faster than fear. Admirals shouted orders that never arrived. Ships jumped blindly, colliding with each other or emerging in empty space without support. Then humanity spoke again, this time privately. Encrypted channels opened directly inside enemy flagships. No one understood how. There were no known backdoors, no shared protocols. Yet the message appeared anyway. You were warned, the human voice said. Calm, unemotional. Withdraw your forces from protected systems. The admirals argued. They demanded proof. They demanded negotiations. They demanded time. Humanity did not reply. Instead, a second relay hub fell. Then a third. Within hours, the aggressor empire's vast military became fragmented pieces, powerful, armed, but blind. Entire armadas drifted, unable to coordinate, unable to retreat, unable to advance. The Galactic Council watched in horror. This was not war as they understood it. There were no declarations, no border clashes, no planet-cracking weapons. Humanity did not strike population centers. They did not chase fleeing ships. They removed the Empire's ability to fight. A senior council historian whispered a truth no one wanted recorded. This is not conquest, they said. This is containment. As reports poured in, something else became clear. Humanity had mapped the galaxy better than anyone realized. They knew which nodes mattered, which systems controlled trade, fuel, logistics, communication. Their strikes avoided civilian infrastructure with frightening accuracy. Refugee corridors remained open, clearly marked, clearly protected. Some worlds even reported human ships escorting evacuation convoys through active war zones. This confused the galaxy almost as much as the violence. Why show mercy now? The answer came from an unexpected place. A junior council aide uncovered an old human archive entry, sealed during the Pact's formation. It described humanity's greatest fear. Not invasion, not extinction, chaos. Humans had come from a world where total war nearly erased them more than once. They had learned that destruction was easy, but rebuilding order was not. So they prepared differently. While other species built empires, humanity built contingencies. While others perfected weapons, humans perfected restraint. And now, restraint is gone. The aggressor empire attempted one final gamble. They ordered a direct assault on a human core system, believing the darkness hid weakness. Their fleet jumped. They emerged into a trap. Human ships waited in layered formations, engines cold, weapons charged. Minefields bloomed into existence, guided by artificial intelligence that adapted in real time. The Empire's leading vessels vanished in silent flashes, cut apart before shields fully deployed. The battle lasted 7 minutes. At the end, the remaining enemy ships powered down voluntarily. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humanity was not fighting to win territory. They were enforcing a boundary. Back in the council chamber, a trembling delegate finally said what everyone was thinking. The Pact did not restrain humanity, they said. It restrained everyone else from learning what humans would do without it. A secure channel opened at the center of the chamber. Human Ambassador Hale appeared. He looked older, tired. The peace pact is over, Hale said. Not because it was violated, but because it was ignored. Counselors pleaded for talks, for amendments, for emergency summits. Hale listened, then shook his head. You had centuries to protect peace, he said. Humanity protected it for you. The channel closed. In the silent void beyond the council's reach, human fleets continued moving. Not forward, not back, but into position. The galaxy realized the truth too late. The war had already ended. What followed would decide who was allowed to exist within the silence humanity was creating. The galaxy had always believed war was loud. War burned skies. War shattered moons. War announced itself with banners, threats, and terror meant to be seen. Humanity's war did none of that. After the fall of the relay hubs, the galaxy waited for the next explosion. It never came. Instead, something worse spread: uncertainty. Entire regions stopped responding. Not destroyed. Not occupied. Simply unreachable. Trade convoys vanished into empty space, only to reappear days later escorted by unfamiliar human warships, their crews shaken but alive. Military fleets jumped toward contested systems and found nothing waiting for them. No enemies, no allies, no signals. Just silence. Command structures collapsed without a single decisive battle. And the galaxy began to understand. Humanity was not fighting fleets. They were dismantling systems. In the heart of the aggressor empire, panic finally replaced arrogance. Admirals argued openly. Generals accused each other of sabotage. Emergency councils were called, then abandoned when members could not arrive. Every screen showed the same problem. They no longer knew where their enemies were. Human fleets did not mass near borders. They did not patrol visibly. They appeared only where they were already needed, cutting supply lines, isolating shipyards, severing data routes that had taken centuries to build. One Empire officer summarized it in despair. It feels like we are being hunted by ghosts who know our future moves before we make them. That was not far from the truth. Humanity had studied the galaxy longer than anyone suspected. During the long peace, they had shared data, built infrastructure, and assisted with logistics. Every aid mission, every trade agreement, every joint patrol had fed into a vast human understanding of how the galaxy truly functioned. They had not gathered secrets. They had gathered patterns. Now those patterns were weaponized. In one system, an aggressor task force arrived to find their fuel depots empty, quietly evacuated weeks earlier by human civilian contractors who had predicted the route of invasion. In another, a shipyard's automated defenses turned against their own docks, reprogrammed through maintenance updates no one had questioned at the time. The galaxy began to whisper a terrifying realization. Humanity had planned for a war they hoped would never happen, and they planned to win it without destroying the galaxy itself. The first true fleet engagement occurred near a binary star system marked as strategically irrelevant by every major power. The aggressor empire sent a desperate armada, hundreds of ships, many damaged, all low on supplies, hoping to break through what they believed was a weak point in the human containment net. They found humanity waiting. The human formation did not charge. It did not retreat. It locked in place. Human ships formed layered arcs, overlapping fields of fire designed not for spectacle, but for denial. When the first enemy ships advanced, their weapons systems began failing in sequence, targeting arrays blinded, propulsion stuttering, internal power grids collapsing under invisible pressure. Then the human ships fired. Not at hulls, at engines, at reactors, at command decks. Ship after ship went dead, drifting helplessly between stars. The aggressor armada tried to regroup. Human ships adjusted instantly, their movements coordinated with machine-level precision. No wasted shots. No pursuit. Only control. The battle ended with nearly the entire armada intact, but completely disabled. Survivors transmitted surrender signals in panic. Humanity accepted every one. This confused the galaxy deeply. Why spare them? The answer came from captured footage leaked by an unknown source. A human admiral stood before a projection of the disabled fleet. His voice was steady, almost weary. "War is not about killing," he said. "It is about preventing the next one." He ordered the crews rescued. Medical aid was provided. Prisoners were treated. Ships were towed, not captured, but escorted out of contested space and impounded indefinitely. No triumph. No speeches. Just a procedure. Across the galaxy, reactions split along old lines. Some civilizations felt relief. Humanity was powerful, yes, but controlled. Predictable in its mercy. Others felt terror, because restraint meant humanity was choosing how much to hurt them. The Galactic Council fractured under the pressure. Several members resigned. Others attempted to open back-channel negotiations with humanity, offering concessions, territory, even tribute. None received a response. Instead, a new phenomenon appeared. Humanity began ranking civilizations. Not publicly, not officially, but patterns emerged. Worlds known for honoring treaties found human patrols nearby, quiet guardians watching trade lanes, escorting refugees, stabilizing regions on the edge of collapse. Worlds known for exploiting the Pact found themselves isolated. Jump routes subtly shifted. Markets dried up. Neighbors distanced themselves in fear of human scrutiny. No declaration was made. Yet the galaxy felt judged. Inside human space, the cost of restraint was finally revealed. Factories ran without pause. Shipyards expanded at impossible speed. Entire generations of human crews activated from reserve status. Citizens who had lived normal lives, trained quietly for a war no one believed would come. Families watched loved ones depart with no fanfare. Humanity did not celebrate this moment. They endured it. On a distant monitoring station, a human intelligence officer reviewed casualty projections. They were lower than expected, but still immense. A subordinate asked the question burning in every human mind. "How far will we go?" The officer answered without looking up. "As far as it takes to make sure this never happens again." Meanwhile, the aggressor empire made one final, desperate broadcast to the galaxy. They accused humanity of tyranny, of silent domination, of replacing the Pact with fear. Many listened, but fewer believed, because the stars themselves told a different story. Where humanity intervened, chaos slowed. Where they withdrew, destruction continued, unchecked by any authority that could replace them. The galaxy faced a cruel truth. Peace had never been self-sustaining. It had been maintained. And now the ones who maintained it were no longer asking permission. The final image of the cycle spread quietly across galactic networks. A human warship drifting near a fractured system border, weapons cold, engines idle, waiting. Not for orders. For decisions made elsewhere. Decisions that would determine who would face humanity's next move, and who would be allowed to survive the new silence forming across the stars. The galaxy learned something unsettling after the battle stopped. Humanity did not withdraw. They remained. Human warships held position at key junctions, hovering like silent sentinels. Their weapons stayed cold. Their engines barely whispered. But no one mistook that stillness for weakness. Where mercy had been offered, it came with conditions. Where it was refused, consequences followed. In systems that accepted humanity's surrender terms, human officers arrived not as conquerors, but as auditors. They inspected shipyards, command stations, and planetary defenses. They did not dismantle everything, only what could be used to threaten others again. Missile silos were sealed, not destroyed. Fleet cores were powered down, not scrapped. Command hierarchies were rewritten, not erased. The message was clear. You may exist, you may rebuild, but you will never again decide the fate of others by force. Some alien leaders accepted this quietly. Their people were exhausted. Their worlds were damaged but alive. Peace, any peace, felt like survival. Others could not accept it. One proud militaristic coalition openly rejected humanity's terms. Their leaders declared that surrender without annihilation was humiliation. They broadcast defiance across every channel they could still access. They promised resistance. They promised revenge. They promised that humanity would bleed. Humanity did not respond. Instead, something subtle began to happen. Trade partners stopped answering the coalition's messages. Fuel convoys failed to arrive. Neutral systems quietly closed their borders. Humanity had not issued an order, but the galaxy had learned the pattern. Association carried risk now. The coalition launched a strike anyway, a fragmented attack against a human-monitored corridor. Their ships barely made it halfway before human containment fleets intercepted them. This time, humanity did not disable engines. They disabled time. Gravitational fields collapsed around the attacking ships, locking them in relativistic traps. Crews experienced hours while the outside galaxy moved on. By the time the fields were released, their allies had vanished, their command structure dissolved, their cause forgotten. Humanity transmitted one message. Mercy is not infinite. The coalition surrendered within the day. Across the stars, civilizations reevaluated everything they believed about power. Humanity did not rule through fear alone. They ruled through predictability. The galaxy learned exactly what actions triggered exactly what responses. Exploit peace and lose your reach. Protect life and gain security. Refuse to choose and be isolated until you do. The Galactic Council attempted to reassert itself. Emergency reforms were proposed. New enforcement mechanisms drafted. Committees formed to replace what humanity had become. Humanity ignored all of it, because the Council no longer mattered. In its place, something quieter emerged. Human observers began attending planetary assemblies uninvited. They listened. They recorded. They asked simple questions about civilian protection, labor conditions, and border conduct. They did not judge publicly. They left. Weeks later, outcomes followed. Some worlds received advanced infrastructure support, medical technologies, climate stabilization arrays, navigation upgrades. Others found themselves excluded from shared star charts, their hyperspace routes slowly degrading without access to updated data. The galaxy realized that humanity was not punishing species. They were punishing choices. This distinction terrified old empires built on inherited dominance. But it inspired younger civilizations that had never truly benefited from the Pact. For the first time, power seemed conditional. Inside human command space, the cost of mercy continued to rise. Ships returned damaged. Crews rotated endlessly. The medics worked without rest. Intelligence analysts tracked 1,000 fragile balances that could collapse if misjudged. A human fleet commander stared at a casualty report late into the cycle. A junior officer stood nearby, hesitant. "Sir," the officer asked quietly, "why don't we just end it? We could finish this in weeks." The commander did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low. "Because endings echo," he said, "and we're the ones who have to live with the sound." That philosophy ran through every human operation. Humanity refused planetary bombardment even when it would have saved time. They accepted higher risks to protect evacuation corridors. They diverted fleets to defend species that had once voted against them in the Council. To the galaxy, this behavior was confusing. To humanity, it was survival. They knew what total war did to a civilization's soul, and they would not let the galaxy learn that lesson the hard way. Then came the leak. A classified human doctrine file surfaced across black markets and intelligence circles. Its title spread faster than its contents. Total containment, final option. The document outlined scenarios far worse than what the galaxy had already seen. Stellar isolation fields capable of sealing entire regions indefinitely. Autonomous enforcement fleets that required no human oversight. self-sustaining patrol networks designed to last centuries. The galaxy panicked. Was humanity preparing to cage the stars themselves? Humanity responded, not with denial, but with confirmation. Yes, the broadcast said. Those systems exist. Fear rippled outward. But they are not active, the message continued. Because they are not necessary. Yet, that final word echoed everywhere. Yet, the aggressor empire, now fractured, contained, and humiliated, attempted one last appeal. Their remaining leaders sent envoys begging for reintegration, offering resources, hostages, even cultural submission. Humanity refused. Not out of cruelty, out of principle. Reentry requires trust, the human response stated. Trust requires time. You have spent yours. The galaxy watched as the once dominant empire faded, not through destruction, but through irrelevance. Its world survived. Its people lived. But its influence died. And the galaxy began to understand the true price humanity demanded. Not blood, responsibility. As Part 4 ended, a new tension spread across the stars. Not fear of annihilation, but fear of judgment. Every civilization now asked the same question in private assemblies and guarded halls. What would humanity decide about us? Because mercy had been given. And now the galaxy had to prove it deserved to keep it. The galaxy thought it had finally understood humanity. They were powerful, but careful. Ruthless, but restrained. Unyielding, but merciful. That belief lasted exactly one cycle. It ended the moment entire star regions disappeared from the map. Not destroyed. Not conquered. Simply gone. Trade guilds noticed first. Shipping routes that had existed for millennia returned nothing but navigation errors. Jump calculations failed without explanation. Even experimental drives slid away from those regions, as if space itself refused entry. Astrophysicists panicked. Space was behaving selectively. Humanity said nothing. Then the term appeared, quietly at first, then everywhere. Total containment. The leaked doctrine had hinted at it, but no one believed humanity would ever activate it. The idea was considered extreme, unethical, and destabilizing beyond measure. Entire hostile regions sealed off. No exits. No entries. No collapse. Just isolation. A prison made of distance and silence. Now it was real. The first contained region belonged to remnants of the aggressor empire. Its world still burned with resentment. Its leaders still whispered rebellion. Humanity had watched long enough. Containment was not announced with a broadcast. It was executed. Across the boundary of that region, invisible frameworks unfolded, gravitational distorters, hyperspace dampeners, and field anchors positioned at mathematical choke points only humans seemed to understand. The stars did not dim, but the paths between them closed. Inside the contained zone, nothing exploded. No fleets were attacked. No planets were harmed. But no ship could leave. Attempts to jump failed. Probes vanished. Long-range messages echoed back as corrupted fragments, looping endlessly inside the sealed volume. The region had become a sealed ocean of stars, and humanity stood outside it. Panic followed instantly. Civilizations far removed from the conflict rushed to confirm their own borders still functioned. Jump tests were run continuously. Emergency summits formed overnight. Old alliances reactivated in fear. If humanity could do this to one region, they could do it to anyone. The Galactic Council, fractured and weakened, called its largest session in history. Every remaining member attended, even those whose worlds lay light years away from the conflict. For the first time since the war began, humanity answered the summons. Ambassador Hale appeared once more. His expression carried no pride, no triumph, only resolve. "You are afraid," Hale said, stating the obvious. "You should be." Counselors demanded explanations. Accusations flew. Some called containment a crime worse than war. Others begged humanity to lift it immediately. Hale waited until the chamber quieted. "Containment is not punishment," he said. "It is prevention." A counselor screamed, "You are imprisoning billions." Hale nodded. "Yes, so that trillions do not die." The chamber fell into horrified silence. Humanity revealed the truth piece by piece. Total containment was not designed to starve regions. Supply corridors were permitted for food, medicine, and civilian necessities. Autonomous systems ensured ecological stability. But military growth inside the zone was impossible. No expansion, No projection of force. No return to power. Civilizations inside containment could survive. They could not threaten. The galaxy recoiled at the implication. Humanity had solved war by removing reach. Not through domination, but through enforced limits. This makes you the jailers of the galaxy, a delegate accused. Hill did not deny it. No, he said. It makes us the ones who stay awake at night, so you don't have to. Outside the council, reactions fractured the galaxy. Younger species, long exploited by empires, felt something close to relief. For the first time, predators could not expand unchecked. Borders meant safety, not vulnerability. Ancient powers felt humiliated. Their influence meant nothing if humanity could turn it off. Some attempted to test the system. A covert fleet from a distant empire approached a containment boundary, armed with experimental drives and forbidden technologies. They crossed the threshold and vanished. No debris returned. No signals followed. Days later, humanity issued a single clarification. Containment boundaries are one way, the message said. Do not test them. No one did again. Inside human space, the activation of total containment was met not with celebration, but with grief. Human crews understood what it meant. Containment was permanent. There would be no glorious final victory. No parade. No treaty signing. No moment where the galaxy returned to innocence. This was an admission that some wounds never healed. A human strategist summarized it quietly during a closed briefing. We didn't end the war, she said. We admitted it never really ends. The cost of maintaining containment was staggering. Fleets rotated endlessly along invisible borders. Automated systems required constant oversight. Any failure could collapse an entire region into chaos. Humanity accepted the burden anyway, because the alternative was annihilation. Over time, the galaxy adapted. Contained regions stabilized. Internal wars burned out without the ability to spread. Civilizations inside began turning inward, reforming, rebuilding, or collapsing under their own choices. Outside, trade routes reorganized. New alliances formed based not on power, but behavior. Reputation became currency. Humanity watched it all. They did not interfere unless lines were crossed. Slowly, fear evolved into something else. Understanding. The galaxy realized that total containment was not humanity's ultimate weapon. It was their final mercy. Because the doctrine included one last clause, one never activated. Total erasure. Humanity had chosen containment instead. They had chosen restraint again. As the cycle ended, a final message circulated quietly among diplomatic channels. Containment zones may be reviewed, it read, after sufficient evidence of change. Hope sparked where none should have existed. But it came with a price. Change would take generations. And humanity would be watching the entire time. Because peace had failed once. And humanity would never allow it to fail again. The strangest thing was not the containment. It was what followed. After the last boundary stabilized and the final hostile fleet was neutralized, the galaxy waited for humanity to speak again, to declare victory, to issue laws, to reshape the stars in their image. Nothing came. No broadcasts. No new doctrines. No ultimatums. Human warships remained in place, engines idle, weapons cold. They did not advance. They did not retreat. They simply stayed. The galaxy grew uneasy. Civilizations had learned to fear explosions, invasions, and threats. They had no instinct for silence. Silence could not be negotiated with. Silence did not explain itself. Entire sectors operated under the quiet presence of human patrols that never hailed, never interfered, never reacted unless provoked. Trade convoys passed through monitored corridors untouched. Refugee flows stabilized without escort. Humanity has become an invisible order. And that terrified everyone. Old empires began to decay in unexpected ways. Without external enemies to justify control, internal fractures surfaced. Leaders who had once rallied their people against outsiders now faced questions they could not silence. Why do we need this fleet? Why do we need this hierarchy? Why do we still live in fear? Some rulers attempted to fabricate threats, false alarms, exaggerated dangers, whispered rumors of human betrayal. Humanity did not respond. The lies collapsed under their own weight. In younger civilizations, something unprecedented happened. Defense budgets shrank. Diplomatic schools expanded. Entire generations grew up without seeing warships orbit their skies. Peace, real peace, began to feel unnatural. A council scholar wrote privately, "We are not at war, yet we are not free. We live under protection we did not vote for." That sentiment spread quietly. Humanity heard it. They did nothing. Because silence was not neglected. It was a test. Inside human command space, analysts tracked a different kind of data now. Not fleet movements or weapons output, but social stability, political reform, civilian welfare trends. Humanity has shifted from battlefield management to long-term observation. Some human officers struggled with this phase. "We're holding the galaxy still," one captain said during a closed debrief. "What if it needs to move?" A senior commander answered without hesitation. "Then it must learn to move without burning itself." The first real challenge to the silence came from an unexpected source. A mid-tier civilization, long neutral and largely ignored, announced its intent to expand into a power vacuum left by the contained regions. They mobilized fleets, not to attack humanity, but to seize abandoned territory. Technically, they violated no human directive. Morally, they crossed a line. Humanity responded for the first time in months. Not with ships, with information. Every system the expansion force planned to enter suddenly received detailed data packets. Evidence of the civilization's hidden labor camps, suppressed colonies, and long-buried atrocities. The revelations spread faster than any fleet. Allies withdrew support. Internal protests erupted. The expansion halted within days. Not because humanity stopped it, but because no one would stand beside it. Humanity never claimed responsibility. But the message was clear. Power without accountability would not be tolerated. The galaxy began to realize something profound. Humanity was no longer enforcing peace through force. They were enforcing it through visibility. Secrets could not survive under human observation. This realization triggered a second wave of fear, quieter, deeper. Every civilization had something to hide. And humanity was patient. Within the contained regions, time moved differently. Without the ability to expand or threaten others, internal dynamics dominated. Some regimes collapsed violently. Others reformed slowly. A few surprised everyone by stabilizing into peaceful states. Humanity watched them too. Not all containment zones were equal. Some boundaries loosened slightly, allowing limited cultural exchange, monitored trade, carefully controlled communication. Others remained sealed, their leaders still unwilling to change. Rumors spread of a future reintegration process. No one knew the criteria. Humanity never published them. Back in the remnants of the Galactic Council, attendance dwindled. The institution still existed, but it no longer commanded authority. Decisions were made elsewhere now, on worlds that valued cooperation, transparency, and restraint. The council became a forum for discussion, not power. Ironically, this was what it had always claimed to be. A former council speaker summarized the irony bitterly. "We spent centuries pretending to govern peace," they said. "Humanity actually does it." Among civilians across the galaxy, attitudes toward humanity shifted again. Fear softened into respect. Respect slowly turned into dependence. That frightened humanity more than anything else. A private human briefing leaked. Just one line, enough to spread everywhere. "We will not replace your choices," it read. "We will only limit the consequences of the worst ones." That statement calmed some. Others found it chilling, because it meant humanity intended to stay, not as rulers, as guardians. The silence stretched on. Cycles passed without war. Borders stabilized. Old grudges faded without reinforcement. Entire species experienced the longest uninterrupted peace in their recorded histories. And yet, something was missing. Purpose. The galaxy had been shaped by conflict for so long that many civilizations no longer knew who they were without it. Humanity understood this. They had lived it themselves. That was why the next move would not involve fleets or containment or judgment. It would involve choice. Deep within human command networks, a new directive circulated, classified, debated, refined. Its goal was simple: force the galaxy to stand on its own. Humanity could not be the solution forever. But first, the galaxy had to prove it could live without needing to be saved from itself. As the cycle ended, human ships remained motionless in the dark. No announcements followed. No warnings. Only a quiet, watchful presence across the stars. And for the first time in history, the galaxy feared not humanity's wrath, But the moment humanity might decide to leave, the silence ended without warning. Not with alarms, not with fleets moving, not with stars going dark. It ended with an invitation. Across every major civilization, across worlds both protected and contained, a single message appeared. Clear, unencrypted, impossible to block. Humanity requests your presence, it said. Not as subjects, not as enemies, as witnesses. Coordinates followed. Not a battlefield, not a council chamber. A neutral system, empty, unclaimed, untouched by war. Fear spread instantly. Some leaders refused. Others were delayed. A few attempted to hide behind procedure, claiming their governments required votes, approvals, and rituals. Humanity replied once. Attendance is optional, the message said. Absence will be noted. That ended the debate. Delegations arrived cautiously. Fleets remained at a distance. No weapons were powered. No escorts allowed beyond a certain range. At the heart of the system floated a single human structure. Not a fortress, not a shipyard. A platform, vast, simple, open to vacuum. Transparent fields allowed the stars to shine through uninterrupted. There were no banners, no flags, no throne. When the assembly gathered, humanity arrived last. Not in a fleet, in one ship. It docked silently. Human representatives emerged, civilians, admirals, scientists, diplomats. Old faces and young ones. No uniforms shared the same design. No hierarchy was obvious. That alone unsettled the galaxy. Humanity did not stand apart from power. They stood within responsibility. Ambassador Hale stepped forward, but he was not alone this time. Others flanked him. Figures whose names were already whispered across the stars. A commander who had overseen containment. A medic who had coordinated refugee corridors. An engineer who had designed the boundary frameworks. Hale spoke first. You believe this is a trial, he said. It is not. Murmurs rippled through the gathered delegations. You believe we are here to judge you. Hale continued. That is also incorrect. Confusion replaced fear. Then why summon us? A delegate demanded. Hale gestured to the stars beyond the platform. Because the galaxy has already been judged, he said. By its actions, by its choices, by what it did when peace was easy and when it was not. The human engineer stepped forward. For centuries, she said, the peace pact worked because someone paid its cost. That cost was vigilance, restraint, intervention when others looked away. The commander followed. When the pact failed, the galaxy expected humanity to rage, he said. To conquer, to rule, to punish. The medic spoke last. We chose something harder, she said. We chose responsibility without ownership. Silence spread, not the fearful silence of before, but a heavy one. Hale resumed. We did not summon you to decide your fate, he said. We summoned you because you already did. Displays activated around the platform. Not weapons, not threats. Histories. Worlds where civilians were protected during war. Worlds where treaties were honored even when inconvenient. Worlds where leaders stepped down to prevent bloodshed. Then others. Worlds where populations were used as shields. Where expansion mattered more than life. Where silence was chosen over responsibility. No names were spoken. No accusations made. Everyone recognized themselves. This, Hale said, is the only judgment that matters. A delegate from a once mighty empire trembled. What happens now? They asked. Hale took a long breath. Now, he said, humanity steps back. The platform stirred. Not mechanically, politically. Humanity announced the unthinkable. Containment zones would begin review. Patrol corridors would be transferred to multilateral coalitions. If those coalitions proved capable of enforcing the same standards, human oversight would remain, but control would not. The galaxy erupted in stunned disbelief. You're leaving? Someone asked. No, Hale replied. We're trusting. That word landed harder than any threat ever had. Trust. Something the galaxy had abused until it broke. Understand this clearly, Hale said, his voice firm. This is not forgiveness. It is an opportunity. He raised a hand, and new data appeared. A framework. A standard. Not laws. Not punishments. Principles. Protect non-combatants. Honor agreements. Limit escalation. Accept consequences. These are not human rules, Hale said. They are survival rules. A delegate from a young civilization spoke hesitantly. And if we fail? Humanity did not answer immediately. When they did, the response was honest. "Then we will return," Hale said, "and we will not debate again." No anger colored his words. Only certainty. The message was clear. Humanity was not claiming the galaxy. They were offering it a chance to stand on its own. One by one, delegations responded. Some pledged reform. Some offered cooperation. Some said nothing, already knowing where they stood. Humanity recorded it all. Then, without ceremony, they departed. The platform powered down. The system returned to silence. But this time, the silence felt different. Across the galaxy, reactions exploded. Some worlds celebrated. Some panicked. Some collapsed under the weight of new responsibility. Coalitions formed, not around power, but around trust. Patrols were reorganized. Old enemies sat at the same tables, forced to choose cooperation or irrelevance. Contained regions watched closely. For the first time, reintegration felt real. Not guaranteed, but it is possible. Inside human space, the mood was not triumphant. It was somber. A senior strategist reviewed projections showing rising instability if humanity withdrew too fast. A junior analyst asked the question no one else would. What if they fail again? The strategist answered quietly. Then at least they'll know what it costs. Humanity had delivered its judgment. Not through fire, not through domination, but by forcing the galaxy to confront itself. As the cycle closed, human fleets began subtle repositioning, not retreating, not advancing, rebalancing, watching, waiting, because peace had failed once. And this time, the galaxy would not be allowed to forget who held it together when it mattered most. History did not mark the end of the war with a date. There was no treaty to sign, no capital to capture, no final battle to remember. Instead, historians would later argue about a quieter moment, when humanity began to step aside, and the galaxy realized it was finally alone with its choices. The transition was not sudden. Human patrols did not vanish overnight. They thinned, redistributed, faded into the background like scaffolding removed from a completed structure. Multilateral fleets took their place in key corridors, crews drawn from species that had once stood on opposite sides of every debate. Mistakes happened. They were small at first. A patrol overreacted. A border skirmish flared. A local governor tested limits. Humanity watched. They did not intervene immediately. That restraint terrified the galaxy more than intervention ever had, because now consequences would not be absorbed by an outside force. They would ripple inward, touching economies, alliances, reputations. And they did. The first coalition to fail did so publicly. Their patrol turned predatory, abusing authority under the excuse of security. Evidence surfaced within days. Leaked records, civilian testimony, trade data. No human message followed. Instead, every other coalition cut ties. Support evaporated. Supply contracts dissolved. Political backing collapsed. The offending coalition disbanded within a cycle. The lesson spread without a single shot fired. Power was no longer about force. It was about trust, and trust was fragile. In former containment zones, change was slower. Some regions remained sealed, their leaders clinging to old myths of destiny and dominance. Others began painful reforms, truth commissions, dismantling of war industries, education focused on cooperation rather than conquest. Humanity adjusted boundaries subtly. Where change held, access widened. Where it faltered, silence remained. No speeches explained these decisions. They did not need to. The galaxy had learned how to read human actions. On worlds once scarred by invasion, children grew up seeing mixed species patrols in orbit, symbols not of fear, but of shared responsibility. Military academies taught conflict de-escalation alongside tactics. Diplomatic failures became scandals, not stepping stones to war. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was no longer central. It had become something better. A record. A place where failures were documented, not buried. Where warnings were archived, not ignored. Where the cost of peace was listed in clear, uncomfortable detail. A council archivist summarized it best. "We finally stopped pretending peace is natural," they said. "We treat it like infrastructure now, something that must be maintained." Humanity did not claim credit. In fact, humans rarely appear in public forums anymore. Their representatives declined honors, refused statues, and redirected praise toward joint efforts. This confused many species. Why step back now after everything? The answer existed in human memory. They remembered what it meant to be watched constantly, to have destiny decided by powers too large to question. They would not become what they once feared. Inside human space, life returned to something like normal, but it was a changed normal. Veterans reintegrated quietly. Shipyards slowed. Emergency production lines went dormant. Memorials were built, not to celebrate victory, but to remember restraint. A human child once asked a returning fleet officer why there were no parades. The officer thought for a long time before answering. Because we didn't win, they said. We survived without becoming something worse. The galaxy, meanwhile, faced a new and uncomfortable freedom. Without a common enemy, divisions resurfaced, but now they had nowhere to hide. Species were forced to define themselves by what they built, not what they opposed. Some failed, some succeeded. Humanity allowed both outcomes to stand. The true test came decades later. A distant civilization, young, ambitious, technologically gifted, discovered faster-than-light methods that bypassed existing corridors. For the first time since the war, a species gained the theoretical ability to expand beyond the limits humanity had enforced. Panic erupted. Old fears returned overnight. Calls for preemptive containment flooded diplomatic channels. Some demanded humanity intervene immediately. Humanity listened, and then refused. Instead, they sent observers, advisors, educators. They shared their own history, unfiltered. The wars, the near-extinction events, the cost of unchecked ambition. They offered guidance, not control. The young civilization paused, debated, and chose restraint. That moment never made headlines. But historians would later call it the real victory, because it proved the galaxy could learn without being forced. As centuries passed, the phrase human standard entered common language, not as a law, as a warning. Is this worth the cost? Will this harm those who cannot defend themselves? Are we prepared to live with the outcome? These questions changed everything. Humanity remained present, but distant, a constant background force, a last line that most civilizations hoped never to see again. Some worlds still feared them. Others admired them. A few resented them. Humanity accepted all reactions equally. They had learned that being right did not mean being loved. On the anniversary of the Pact's collapse, no official ceremonies were held. But across the galaxy, people paused anyway, to remember burning worlds that never fully healed, to remember silence that saved trillions, to remember a species that had been underestimated and chose responsibility over revenge. In a quiet human archive, a final entry was added to the record of the war. It read, "Peace failed because it was assumed to be permanent. Wrath came because warnings were ignored." What followed was not humanity's rule, but humanity's refusal to look away. The galaxy moved on, stronger, wiser, still imperfect, and humanity watched from the edges of the stars, not as conquerors, not as kings, but as the ones who had seen the end of everything once, and would never allow it to happen again.